Hello everyone, welcome to this session. So in AI, we deal with data, and data always saved in files, right? And for these files can be saved in tables in MATLAB. So in this session, we mainly talk about the basics of the MATLAB table. We also call them table arrays. So tables are commonly used to import and export external data. For example, many data files are CSV data, and we can just put them to MATLAB and represent them as a table. The tables are very useful when you have tabular data of different data types. So for example, in this column, the data type is string, and that column, the data type is a number, right? So all of them, we can merge them to a table. And MATLAB have built-in functions for the tabular operations, and that is this session will focus on. The first step is to create a table, right? So we can say a table can be created by the table function. So this function, table, parentheses, A1, A2 to AN. So the A1 to AN are what? They are the column, the table columns, right? And the column name, is a variable name A1, variable name A2 to variable name AN. So A1 is a variable and it contains what? Contains the A1 column, a column of data, right? A2 the same, and to AN, that is the same. So let's show this by an example. So now I define the three variables. They are called name, height, weight. So in these three variables, all of them are what? Are 4x1 column data, right? The first one is a string, a Green, Smith, Sanchez, Lee, and height and weight are 4x1 numbers. Now I use the table function, table parentheses, name, height, weight. So the generated output, we call it my table. So let's see what happens. See, after executing this command, the result is my table. The data type is table. This is another type of data, 4x3 table. And we can see what is the content, the name, height, weight. So what are these? These are the variable names, right? Name, height, weight. The variable names are used as column names. And these are the contents of these three variables. So all here, right? So this is a 4x3 table is generated by the table function. Well, sometimes we don't want to use the default name, but by default, we use variable names. And sometimes we can use an optional keyword called variable names to define the name of columns as we like. So here I show an example. Again, the name, height, weight, but now I create a new table, my table 2. I still use the table function, name, height, weight. So these three dots means I change the line to input this command. I use variable names. Variable names, this is a keyword, followed by a square brackets. In the square brackets, I put three new names, right? Last name, height with a centimeter as a unit, and weight with kilogram as a unit, and we put them together with square brackets, separate them by comma. But this is a new command, right? So by running this one, we can see like this. My table 2 is generated, still 4x3 table. The table content is still the same, but you can see the name changes. It's not these variable names, but the name I defined. Last name, height, and weight, right? Okay. So now, normally one table not only have column names, it may also have row names, right? So now I want to make the Green, Smith, Sanchez, and Lee, this one as row names, not as a column of the table, as row names. So how can I do that? How can I add row names? We can see it like that. So we can use the row name argument in the table function. So this is an example. We still define the three variables, but name, this one I use it as a row name, not a column in the table. So what I do is like this. table height, weight. So in this way, the table only have two columns, height and weight. Then the name, this is still the same size variable, right? So still 4 by 1, but I tell the table function, this one is a row name. So I use a row name arguments. Row names give name. So it means the name after this is defined as a row name of this table. So let's see what is generated. It's like this, a 4 by 2 table, no longer 4 by 3, 4 by 2. This is a content. These are the column names, and this becomes a row name, like this. So now we have created a table with the content, the column, and rows, right? Now what we need to do next is we want to index in the table. Just like the matrix, we create a matrix, we want to index the matrix. Let's see how to index that. So if we want to index a column, this is quite straightforward. We just use dot name. So then to index that column, right? So the return data type is an array. So let's see an example. This is my table. Now I want to index the height column. What can I do? My table dot height. So the return is this. Answer, this one's. Right. Okay. So now I want to index a row. How to do that? We can use a parenthesis method, like a matrix index, right? So we can say my table brackets. We use a row name Smith. We put Smith here. This is a string, the Smith row. Comma, colon. Colon means what? Remember the week 1 class, right? We can do all of the contents in the Smith row. So this is the output. So Smith row, the height and the weight with a column name and row name. So remember the return one is no longer an array. This becomes a smaller table. So the data type is table, 1 by 2 table here. So also we can still use all the previous learned matrix indexing, right? So we can use a standard way, parenthesis-based matrix indexing way. So we can say, I want to get the second row, second column of this table. So let's see in this table, what is the second row and second column? This one, right? 60. Then we can say my table 2, 2, generate this one. This is a 1 by 1 table with a weight and Smith as a column name and row name. So pay attention that if we use the matrix index method for tables, the return value is a smaller table. It's not an array anymore. So we can say this is but if we use a dot method, to index a column, the return value is an array. But the return type is an array, right? Okay. So now we know how to index into a table. Then we can do what? We can add rows into a table. Add rows or add column into a table. So if we want to add a column, we already know how to do that, right? We define a new variable, we use a table function, right, to add some column. If we want to add rows, how can we do? So we can do by the table concatenation. Concatenation, you have seen that before in the matrix study, right? In the week 1, at that time we have concatenate matrix horizontally and vertically. So we can do the same thing for tables. Let's see an example. Define the variable name, height, weight, table 1. This is a table we have defined already. This is a table 2 we have defined already, right, in the previous thing. So now there are 2 tables, table 1 and table 2. So table 1 and table 2, both of them have how many rows and columns? So they have a different number of rows, right? But the column number is the same, right? So then we can concatenate them vertically. So we use a semicolon, right? So we can say it's like this. So the name, height, weight, all 3 columns. This is the first table. This is the second table. This one have 4 rows. This one have 1 row, right? So by the semicolon, we add rows to the table, right? Yeah. So if we want to remove data from a table, what we can do, we can use the matrix way, right? So here we can see table 1, the third row become empty. So 3, column, the third row, all of them become empty. So this is the original table. So when we want to remove the third row, the syntax row, let's see what happened after using this command is here, right? The syntax row is removed. So this is a resultant table, a smaller table. 5 by 3 becomes 4 by 3 table, right? So in this class, there are more details and examples in the live script, and you can run them to make sure you understand every step of how to manipulate a table. So that's all for this session. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.